Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And first and foremost, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule today or this evening to join us for September's FMMP session. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for whoever invited you to come and be a part of the discussion this evening. And thank you again for just being able to see the vision. Hopefully you'll learn something, and we want you to join in this discussion and participate as much as you can and you would like to. For those of you returning to us and always being a part of this vision and a part of the Female Mentor Morale Program, thank you so much for supporting it. Thank you so much for being able to allow your soldiers, your civilians, or your friends to be a part of an organization or a group that wants to give back to their community. And so before we get started, I also want to thank our Facebook Live family. That's hosted by Sergeant Major Jose Raimundo. So he has 8 pages, I think it's 8 pages, Sergeant Major, that he runs a Facebook Live session while we're doing this. So what we see here, I'm sorry, how much it's 7? It was 8, okay. All right, and so he runs his Facebook Live, so it goes out to so many different people on the Facebook pages. So thank you all for joining us as well. Now, before we get started with any evening, any FMMP session, we always like to start out with a prayer just to make sure we're covered with an understanding and an opportunity to fellowship together. So with that, I'm gonna have Captain Sierra Cooper, please give us our prayer for the evening.
Absolutely, ma'am, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a moment of prayer. Lord, thank you for waking us up this morning. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to come together in fellowship and to receive this professional development from our guest speakers. I ask that you open our hearts and you open our minds to receive this mentorship tonight. I ask that you continue to watch over us as we continue to grow and prosper here on this earth. And in Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And for those of you, please always pray in your own denomination. We just like to always offer the opportunity to have a blessing over anything that we do. And so for those of you that have joined us tonight, we have a great evening with another set of phenomenal leaders who have dedicated their lives and their careers to taking care of our soldiers, our civilians, our family members, and just pouring into our lives to make sure that we have a path of success. And with that, we always enjoy bringing these leaders to you because you may not have the opportunity to hear from our senior leaders, both military, active, and retired. And so the amount of knowledge and experience and information that they have and to share it with us is just a great opportunity that we like to share with you all. And so with that, I want to go on and introduce our first panel member. Our 2 panel members this evening are here again, are phenomenal leaders in their communities. The first panel member I'd like to introduce is Lieutenant General Retired Patricia Horoho. Now, for those of you that are medical, and Sergeant Major Raimundo, I will tell you he has a special place in his heart for you in all the medical community because he hosts the medical community for us. And so with that, ma'am, for those of you who have had the opportunity to read her bio, I just want to highlight a few things for you all, because to me, it's always important to understand how history is still being made. But to have people in our midst that have made history, have been the ones that have laid the path for us, I just think it's very important for you to recognize those things. So General Horoho served as the 43rd U.S. Army Surgeon General. That in itself is a feat. She served 33 years on active duty, and that was phenomenal. But she also became the commander of the U.S. Army Medical Command. And so for those of you that don't know what the historical part of that is that she made history by being the first woman, first nurse, and first non-physician to hold those posts. And so that in itself is a feat. And so I'm so excited for you all to hear, and for me to hear also her story of her journey of becoming the person she is today. Now, she currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of OptumServe, and that is it's the end-to-end federal business of Optum and United Health Group. And so I'm going to hopefully have her share a little bit more of what that is, because even though we think she's retired, she has retired with the R behind her name from the military, but I think she still wears a uniform on the inside. She's just wearing her urban camouflage. And so she's still giving back. And I know she has a unique role in the COVID fight for COVID and getting rid of that. And so, ma'am, I want you to please share that with us this evening as well.
Thank you. Such an
You're
honor.
welcome.
Appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you, ma'am. And with that, our second panel member is goes without saying, a phenomenal leader here in CASCOM, because he is our CASCOM commanding general, Major General Mark Simmerly. And he serves here as the CASCOM commander, Fort Lee commander, center, the Logistics Center of Excellence or Sustainment Center of Excellence for all of the logistics community. The other beautiful part of him being here is that he is now the second and the key leader who is sponsoring and leading the Female Mentor to Morale program. So it's an honor to have you here, sir, this evening with us, because I think it sends a huge message for those of us that are in the trenches and continuing to try to fight for our soldiers, for them to see our senior leaders like yourself and General Horoho to talk to us directly and share your thoughts. Because again, sometimes we're not in those meetings or some of those big power sessions to understand the vision or to understand the thoughts that leaders have to go through and deciding how we as soldiers continue to lead or continue to serve. And so hearing it directly from you, sir, I believe your people first strategy is something that everyone is going to be on board with, and understanding all of the things that you want to bring to the CASCOM community. So with that, sir, thank you so much for joining us as well. And I'm going to begin the evening by stating to you all, after they give their messages for the evening, we open it up to question and answer time. That is the opportunity after they, both General Horoho and General Simmerly, have delivered their messages. We then open it up and allow the discussions to happen. Ask any questions that you have to either one of the panel members or both of them. Please feel free to add your comments in the chat room. If there's a question that you'd like to ask and you don't feel comfortable asking it, please put it in there. We will definitely ask it for you. And there's also a feature on Zoom where you can raise your hand. So please raise your hand and we will definitely call on you and make sure you have the opportunity to speak directly with them and be able to ask your questions and get some great guidance and information. So with that, ma'am, I would like to start with you, ladies first. I would like to start with you, and please take it away.
Thank you so much. I am really honored to be here tonight. And I thought the topic of diversity has actually, you know, when you take the time and you go back and look over your career, you realize it's been woven in there and it's kind of shaped who you are, and it's shaped the journey that you travel. And so when I think of diversity, and I've thought of this through the years, it's really diversity in gender, ethnicity, in religion, in political views, experience, in cores. And so kind of throughout my career, that's really what we looked at. And diversity is not limited, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, right? In kind of our view. But I thought it'd be important to take it back. So I came in on active duty in 1983. Just 1978, I believe it was, when females were allowed then to stay on active duty if they got pregnant. And so I share that with you because it just shows it hasn't been that long ago where things were very, very different. And also when I came on active duty, nurses could not command. The only corps within Army medicine was the medical corps. And they could command and stay in that one particular command anywhere from 15 to 20 years. So not a lot of diversity at the leadership level. And so when I came in, there's a couple lessons learned that I think kind of shaped why I felt like it was important to be able to have my voice heard. Because really the profession that I was part of was a very female dominated profession, being nursing. The leadership profession I was part of throughout my entire career was very male dominated. And almost in every role I was in, I was almost always the only female in the room, or it was, you could count them like on 3 fingers. So not a lot of gender diversity. And so my very first assignment at Fort Carson, brand new lieutenant going down to the logistics area to get supplies for my patient. And there was a sergeant that was there. And I said, "Good morning, Sergeant." I said, "I need to go back there and I need to get some supplies." And he said, "No." And I said, what do you mean no?" And he said, "No, you can't go back there." And I said, "Well, I need to." He said, "Well, you can't." And so I walked away and I thought, okay, this is just wrong. And the more I thought about it, I thought, okay, next day, same sergeant, same young lieutenant, second lieutenant. I walked there and I said, "Good morning, Sergeant." And I walked right by him. I said, "I'm going to get my supplies." He said, "Good day, ma'am." I got my supplies and left. And what that taught me at the beginning of my career, whether he intentionally was trying to teach me a lesson, or I just learned it on my own. I believe he was trying to teach me a lesson as a young lieutenant, is don't give away the authority you already have. When you give away the authority you already have, you allow someone to make the decisions for you. And so following that, I went into recruiting command. And the reason why I brought that out for diversity and inclusion to kind of talk about, and also it's a key part of my journey, is I went into the 1st Med Brigade. And when I went into the 1st Med Brigade, the brigade commander was an infantry battalion. I'm infantry brigade commander. My battalion commanders, field artillery, and then aviation commander. So I supported Harrisburg and Pittsburgh recruiting battalions. They had just fired the nurse counselor out of Harrisburg. They had the nurse counselor in Harrisburg had a nervous breakdown, and they fired the Pittsburgh nurse counselor. So trust me, nurses were not well respected. And when I reported into the Pittsburgh battalion, my office was a broom closet, and not exaggerating. In the battalion headquarters, I literally had to walk sideways to even get into the tiny little room where they had squeezed this little desk and a little folding chair. And there was no diversity on the staff. I was the only either combat arms or combat service support kind of comprised the headquarters, most of them all males. And it ended up being the best assignment I've ever had in my career. We ended up becoming, I won the Brigade Staff Officer of the Year award. We made mission box every single month. We made it for the year. And what it really taught me, though, is that you've got to look at your messaging. You have to look at how you are an ambassador and ambassadorship, and changing your narrative so that it resonates with the people that you're serving and the teams that you're serving on, and the accountability piece of that. And that changes with every single assignment. Because once you do that, what I found is once I started doing that, then you became welcomed on the team, and you were no longer that outsider, you were an integral part of the team. And then after that, I went to Command General Staff College, an assignment at Fort Bragg in between, but then as the head nurse, but then I went to Command General Staff College. And so for Army medicine at that time, there were only 4 nurses that got selected to go. So it was like a less than a 1% selection rate to go to CGSC. And when I was in the class, and you're in your small group, you're supposed to sign up for things. And so I raised my hand to sign up as the S3. And one of the special forces officers looked at me, a teammate, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to sign up to be the S3. He said, "Well, why aren't you being the social director?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, why aren't you being the social director?" Which you could have heard a pin drop kind of in the room. And he said, "You realize you were taking a seat of a combat arms teammate." And he said, "You don't belong here and you shouldn't be here." And I just looked at him and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm not going to argue with you." I said, "But what I am going to do is I'm going to prove to you by the end of this year the value of having an Army medicine team member on your team." And I said, "Because if I don't understand how your weapons are arrayed on the battlefield, the type of injuries that they cause," I said, "how can we best support you in time of war?" We ended up becoming actually really good friends. And part of that was through not taking things personal, and also allowing them to embrace that there is goodness in diversity, and there's goodness in diverse thoughts and gender. And many of them had never served with a female at that time. So not only was I not, combat arms or combat service support, I was a gender that they've not even used to, working with. And so then I went down to the 249th General Hospital. And at that time, which fell underneath the 44th Med Brigade, and I had the honor of being a commander. So command started in the early 90s for Army medicine to open up for diverse genders. And it was the only female out of the 44th Med Brigade. So when we got together at Fort Bragg, and no disrespect, but when I went in the room, it was a room filled with a lot of testosterone. And it was those moments where you have to inside, let your feelings stay really inside you, and you have to just act like you belong. And General Simmons said, "Don't ever let them see you sweat." And so I didn't. And we ended up, really working together very well, building great relationships. But also it breaks down barriers, because then they start realizing you can have a female serve, right? You can have a diverse talent on the team, and it does make a difference. And so then at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, when I was assigned there as the chief nurse, and everything broke in Walter Reed, 42 investigations ongoing. And it was, when the world felt like we had let down, really, we left a warrior behind. And there was a lot of media focus, a lot of Army focus, congressional focus. And I ended up having my command diverted from Launchstool to Walter Reed to take over in the midst of all of that. And the reason why I brought that out is I was the first female in 98 years to command Walter Reed. So when you looked on their wall of command, it literally went back to the Civil War. And all of these pictures of white male, physicians, very stoic. And then, and I always felt like it was like one of these things is not like the other, when you had that command photo up there. But what I learned from that is people just want someone to lead, and they want to know you care. And so it's really not so much that you're different, or that someone hasn't, filled that role before. It's really building a team of teams and diverse talent. I used to ask the question when we'd be around the table, whose voice isn't being heard, and where are our positive deviants across Walter Reed at that time? And I'd say, where are the people who rub people wrong because their ideas are just not accepted readily? And I made sure their voices were heard, because they usually either caused us to think differently, to look at the problem differently, or to mitigate risk. And I felt like we came up with kind of the best solution. And then I'll fast forward as a Surgeon General. So when I got selected as a Surgeon General, which to this day remains the most humbling opportunity, and I still cherish every moment to have served. I didn't think I would be competitive for it, because at that time they've never had a non-physician in that role. I was serving as the Deputy Surgeon General. And so when I got the call from General Casey, I literally had just landed in Australia after 24 hours, less than 24 hours being on the ground. He called, said, "Congratulations, now get on the plane and come on back." And so when I came back, it was this mental preparation of knowing, going into a role that a female has never been in, a non-physician has never been in. And so one of the things I did ask is, I asked General Corelli and General Schoomaker, and I said, if I am going into this role, I need to deploy to Afghanistan before I go into it. I need to make sure that I know what is going on with our service members of all service at the tip of the spear. And so I got to deploy. I traveled 4,000 miles, went over to 200 different FOBs and COPs, and really got a good sense of women's issues, of behavioral health, concussive care. And it allowed me, I think, to lead differently by understanding what was going on in theater. And then when I took over as the Surgeon General, right before I did, I got a call from the UK, and this will put it in perspective. And the UK called to say, "Congratulations. How does it know that the entire world is watching you to see if you succeed or fail?" And I remember holding the phone and thinking, okay, I'm not sure that's a congratulatory call, but what it did do for me is it widened my lens. It made me realize that what we do in the US matters worldwide. And not that I didn't know it before, I just don't think I realized it so much from a very personal perspective. And I had more fathers come up to me and say, "Because you were selected as a Surgeon General, my daughter now has hope. There's a pathway that they can do whatever they want to be doing in life." And so we're all mentors and role models, whether we realize it or not, whether you're male or female, whatever job that you're in, or if you identify with any gender, right, or no gender, you serve as a role model. And Israel and France, we had a conversation after being in the job a year. Israel said, would you like to know what happened when the US put a female into the role and a non-physician? I said, I would. And they said, it was the shot that was heard around the world. Countries were calling each other saying, can you believe that the United States of America put a female in, not a nurse and not a physician. It was the female that really broke the barrier for them. And France asked us to actually help leader develop their nurses. And they were holding a general officer position open and saying that we have shown that you could put diverse talent into those leadership roles, and it made them look at what they were doing, and they wanted our help to help them to grow their leaders. So there's a couple things, and then I'll be cognizant of time, so we have more for Q&A. The piece that I think was always there, and it still is, it's the piece of confirmation bias. People are not used to, they're getting better, but through most of my career, and especially when I became a general officer, they were not used to having a female general officer. I was the only female general officer in Afghanistan, and there were 48 countries there. So when people would, walk by, they were like taken off guard when they realized. When I would walk with my aide somewhere, not in Afghanistan, but other places, they always saluted my aide first, my male aides first. And then they'd walk by and I'd hear, oh, and then there would be an explicit, word. And they'd say, sorry, ma'am, and I didn't take it personal, but what it made me realize is we are so conditioned with our biases, and it's important that we as leaders take the time to ensure diversity in ethnicity and gender, in thought, in education and experience, because the more we do that, the more it breaks down those biases that actually serve as a barrier for people building those diverse teams. So let me turn it back to you. And I am, when we get to Q&As, happy to answer any questions at all. Just wanted to kind of give a wave top if that meets what you needed.
Absolutely, ma'am. And it's probably, I can't tell you how many people on here right now will probably resonate with everything that you just said resonates with us, because what you were experiencing at that time, we're actually still experiencing. I have a male command sergeant major, and I walk and they will look at him and go to the position of parade rest. And he will look at them and say, don't you see that colonel standing there? And they're like, no. And so I have to help him realize they don't see, I'm an afterthought. And so we're trying to change that. So I truly appreciate that. And we're still becoming the first of many, we're setting that path. So I appreciate those comments, ma'am. And they do resonate with all of us.
Yeah, it's I always thought it's not so much being the first, you just never want to be the last, right? Because you want to make sure that you have done a good enough job that you pave the way for it to be accepting for others to follow.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And I'm excited for them to start asking questions to you.
Thank
Well,
you.
we're going to jump to General Assembly, sir. I know we've had a great conversation last week. And so I'm excited to hear your thoughts. I'm sure everyone is here ready. And then we're going to get into that dialogue after you finish her. So, sir, please take it away.
Well, good evening, everybody. I tell you what, a really tough act to follow, ma'am. And I thank you for telling your story. I found it very inspirational. I know everybody did. I really learned a lot from you. And I want to thank Colonel Pritchard Brown. She's our FF&P director, as well as a brigade commander, right? So a significant leader with significant responsibilities. And we're really privileged that you've taken on this responsibility and helped set the example, and also establish this forum for us. It's a powerful forum. This is my first time to participate on it, and I can already see so many leaders who have a lot to share with us, both junior and senior. And I can imagine the robust conversation that we've had in the past, and I look forward to participating in that in the future. And I have to say, there's some other folks that have helped Colonel Pritchard Brown. Our Army G1, I have to mention Lieutenant General Brito, also CW5 Yolanda Dixon Allen, and also, Dixon Carter, and Lieutenant Colonel Pritchard Allen, who I see driving. And don't take your hand off the wheel now. We want you to get home safe. But that four-person team has really helped to advance this initiative and take it well beyond CASCOM. And it's really had some reach. And I can tell by a lot of the senior leaders that I see on here today that, we've got a lot of participation that's valuable. And I really want to talk about the value of focused mentorship tonight. That is an example of what we're doing right now with the FMMP, but certainly the responsibility we all have to serve as mentors and to set the example in our formations. But I do want to talk a little bit about this specific program, just to give everybody some context that kind of demonstrates our capability to reach others and to make difference in lives, and also to make differences in our leadership approach, especially when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so just a few statistics to start off with. This is the 18th session of this FFMP, and it gets bigger every single time. We've had 48 general officer level participants as panel members so far, and many more CSMs and CW5s as well. 23 installations, 23 have adopted this program as a model. And we've got approximately 650 service members and DA civilian participants. So, hats off to you, Dia, for establishing this network. And I'll tell you, this is a first for me to participate in a forum like this, not just a virtual platform, but this focused conversation on gender. Certainly we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but sometimes we need to talk about things specifically as well to get to the point and to help others see a way. And that's really, my theme is you can't be what you can't see, right? So we're all very familiar with that sentiment and that saying, and that's what this forum offers. It's an audience not only able to see, but also to connect directly with female leaders who've overcome significant challenges in their successful careers. And I'll also offer that we see models of dignity, accomplishment, resilience, and even humor among our female leaders that we learn from. And of course, it's nested in our Army's People First strategy, TRADOC's People First strategy, CACS, and here at CASCOM, our People First lines of effort. I think it provides a safe environment to exchange ideas and to share experiences of what's worked and what's not worked for our participants, and then offer a rare opportunity for junior leaders and soldiers to dialogue and network with those senior leaders. And what I've seen tonight and what I've been told before is that the tone's practical. Suggestions on how you can make a difference that are simple, sensible, and yet powerful. It also helps to demonstrate that concerned leaders across the Army are working effectively to empower female leaders and to help them overcome adversity. And I wanted to include some of the statistics about the number of senior leader participants as an indicator, not so much of the scope or the popularity of the program, which are immense, but also provide some key insights into their own leadership journeys and the challenges many have had to overcome under their own unique circumstances, like we just heard from Lieutenant General Horojo. So their examples show us the power and resilience of leaders who've had every reason to give up but chose not to. And I know you find them, and I do, find them being an inspiration and model for those who are fighting for equity. And their example serves as an inspiration for anyone who participates in this forum, male or female, and a model for developing female leaders. And that's really a theme I hope everybody takes away. This is about leadership. And anybody from where we're talking about diversity, anybody will benefit from the example of a leader who's overcome adversity. Regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, your religion, there's an instruction there that's going to help you lead yourself, but also lead others in your formation. And this function of the FFMP is to pair mentors with junior leaders and our soldiers, and that mentorship is a core tenet of our leadership development. And it's also a responsibility that we leaders have to give voice to our formations and account for, address specific demographic concerns within each one of our organizations. And in my command philosophy, I describe 3 leader expectations that I break down into 3 components. Trust, and that's inspiring and sharing trust, coaching and mentoring for success. Discipline is the second one. Living the Army values, leading by example with dignity and respect. And commitment is the third, achieving team success and team excellence through engaged leadership and ensuring positive leadership in a positive environment. And as the CASCOM commander, of course, my top priority is taking care of our people. That includes treating everyone with dignity and respect, building cohesive teams, ensuring a positive leadership and climate, and championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And championing is an active verb, right? That's an active role that we all serve. And you have to put yourself out there. You have to make broad statements of your intent if you want other people to understand what you intend for your formation. And in that note, I think it's very important to remember the importance of equality and equity in the military, and then specifically gender equality and gender equity. And with both, I believe we're healthier than we once were in the Army, but we're not perfect, and we still have a long way to go. And a way to get there is to improve it through dialogue, education, and action. And I see tonight there's going to be a lot of dialogue and hopefully some education. Certainly on my part, I've already learned quite a bit, but also action that follows from us all. And so, for me, the bottom line about gender inequality is that it reduces the readiness of our Army. And we all have a responsibility to ensure that we can achieve the greatest readiness that we can. And, for an example, we often present a false choice to our female leaders between family and career, in the way that we communicate with them, in the way that we encourage them. And so I think it's very important that we talk to them about how to balance a career, and also acknowledge that they have family responsibilities just like everybody does, and be specific about that, because often we are either intentionally or unintentionally limiting their career potential. And we've all seen the stereotypes, unconscious bias, and I've been taught to think about this as pregnancy and postpartum discrimination, and those things still exist, and often we don't put a name to them. So for instance, we feel that the female leader wants to pursue a career and have a family, and then also, take on some traditional roles they may have in their family with regard to their household or their kids' education. We often make them feel that they're making a choice to be not competitive in their field, and we don't help to counsel them through those things. And recently I was approached by a senior leader in my organization who informed me that she was pregnant. And I hate to say that she almost informed me apologetically, like it wouldn't be well received. And for me, it was the best news you could hear for anybody when you find that out. And it's really your responsibility then as a leader to help them pursue their goals, help them achieve their mission, and accommodate them, and be able to talk about that in some very positive ways. I have to say also, I talked about stereotypes and unconscious biases. I think we also need to talk about sexual harassment and sexual assault in different ways. For instance, we know we don't often talk about that one motive for sexual harassment and assault is to disempower or to delegitimize our female service members. And of course, when that occurs, the consequences for their trust in the profession, for their trust in their leaders around them, is profound, and often ends up with us losing some key talent and some key leaders from our formations. And so then we have junior leaders who may feel intimidated or hesitant to act when they witness discriminatory or harmful behavior, especially from someone who's senior to them. And so we owe it to those leaders to give them the confidence, the language, and the avenue to speak out when they need to. And on that point, I think we can all use some more education on how to address gender discrimination. I know that I can. But as a starting point, I recommend, we go back to Army doctrine, and what I recommend everybody review is Army Leadership and Profession, which is ADP 6-22 for all our leaders. And what I really like about that doctrine is that it describes counterproductive leadership behavior. And it breaks it down, and it describes the responsibility of all Army personnel, regardless of rank, to act when they encounter counterproductive leadership behaviors, including discriminatory acts or language. And the names that they put on the counterproductive leadership, where they first describe it, define it, and then give specific acts: abusive behavior, self-serving behavior, erratic behavior, corrupt behavior, and leadership incompetence. It's really instructive when you read that in the manual, and you think about how you put that in the context of diversity and how those behaviors can really impede the potential and the performance and the trust of our service members. And there's a key quote in there that I think is really notable. And this doctrine says, any member who witnesses these behaviors must proactively monitor and take action to eliminate counterproductive leadership. So, that empowers every single member of our team, and it implies a responsibility to every leader to make sure that we set the climate for anybody to take those actions when they witness that behavior. And so, our Army is very clear. We have high standards for equitable treatment. The challenge is being able to realize those high standards. And when we fail to uphold those standards, those disparities and gaps in the trust affect our operational readiness. And quite frankly, when you look at our Army today, we don't have the time or the talent to lose by not having a focus on taking care of our people, by not ensuring that everyone is treated equitably and equally. And so, I'll just close by saying we must all actively work to build trust and ensure that every member of our Army family, which the nation needs to protect itself, can serve to their full potential. And that's really the last thing I want to wrap up with. But I want to thank everybody for the time to talk tonight, and I look forward to any additional dialogue.
Sir, thank you so much. And I think having them hear you and General Horoho talk about the key things that we as leaders have to understand, everything that you all have talked about, a new generation comes in, we have to deal with a new generation and change those minds. And as we all know, military culture takes a long time to change. The climate that we set, though, can be immediate. And it starts with leaders like yourself and General Horoho coming in and putting that information out to others to say, I will take the lead and make the change. And so we really appreciate you all taking the time to do this. Alone is an opportunity for so many leaders to emulate, to say, well, if my boss and my boss's boss are out there saying it, then I'm okay with saying it. I bring that up because I know a number of members of the participating members here have addressed concerns, and we're going to open up to those questions. But I know a number of them have addressed concerns to me of how does a leader amongst their peers and their seniors, how does a leader engage with their soldiers and build that trust to have the juniors comfortable with talking to them about the issues in their formations. And so that will be the first question I will open up with to you all. How do we as leaders help get our subordinates to feel comfortable, to trust us, to then feel that the Army is not letting them down because of their environment? How do we help get that environment to get better with the peers? Because we can't be with them all the time. I always tell soldiers, I can't be with you all night long, so I need other soldiers to help me and my sergeant major and all of our leaders identify those issues that we need to go in and dig in. So what do you recommend as leaders? Something as the FMMP, or what can they do? What can other leaders do if they choose not to do FMMP? What can they and what should they be doing to get their soldiers to feel more comfortable and trusting of their leadership to actively engage and bring information reports to them? Sir, I'll give that to you first, and then General Horoho, I'll definitely give it to you.
Thanks, Dia. It's a great question. So how do you generate trust in your formation? And it's something that we should all think about because, I think, trust is the lifeblood of our profession. And it's incumbent upon us as leaders not only to build trust in the organization, but also to share trust and then extend trust. Because the only way you can really influence an organization is by extending trust to your subordinates so they can be agents of your intent. And if you don't trust them to share your message, then you're going to really limit yourself and you're going to limit your reach. But I think it all really begins by the personal example that you set and the way that you treat people, the way that you communicate with them. And you will be judged very quickly by your subordinates if you say you want to treat people well, but you don't in fact treat people well. So always treating people with dignity and respect, always coaching, teaching, and mentoring every member of your team and treating every member of your team fairly and equitably, I think are really the ways that you start to establish that trust in within that organization is through your actions. But also you have to encourage your subordinates to establish that trust. And so the coaching and teaching that you give to your subordinates, that it really sets the tone and helps to spread and distribute your intent across the organization is really the next step. And I'll pause there.
No, sir, that was great. Thank you so much. General Horoho?
Yeah, Mark, you did a beautiful job. So I've only got a couple things that I think I can expand upon that. I think it's really looking and how do you create that psychological safety, right? In an environment where people feel comfortable being vulnerable, allowing their voice to be heard. And one of the things that I found when I was on active duty, and I continue to do this, but more so when I was on active duty, small group sessions where just you as a leader go several levels down and you just have very open conversations and you tell them right up front, non-attribution. You then keep that code of silence, but you take the nuggets of information they shared and then you act on it appropriately. I think one of the things that we lose trust is when we allow or we create an opportunity for people's voice to be heard, and then we don't do anything with that. And then once people, put themselves out there and they're vulnerable and their leadership doesn't act, they usually won't put themselves out there again. So I think even if you can't do what they said, you can follow back and give them a reason why, and at least kind of close the loop with them. I think the other thing is really looking as a leader at micro affirmations and micro abrasions. And we sometimes unknowingly, because we're so busy, we could actually send micro abrasions where we walk past someone and we don't acknowledge them. We don't look someone in the eye, right? We cut someone off in the middle of a sentence, or we're doing our email at the time when someone's trying to share something really important for them, to us. We think we can do two things at once. We really need to give that person our full attention and then take the time for the affirmations of just the smallest thing of acknowledging a person, saying hello, right? Giving them positive feedback when they've done something well, sending a little note, picking up a phone and saying, hey, I just heard you had a baby. Congratulations, right? Or I, heard that you lost a family member. So sorry. That personal connection will build a trust. And I think once you have trust, you open someone's heart. And once you open their heart, you can open their mind. And then you can really create miracles as a team. So
That was awesome, ma'am. No, honestly, that was a truly, that is what leaders need to hear from both of you and all the other senior leaders on here and everywhere, to be okay with helping them understand I can get close to you and build that trust without any nefarious
right.
thoughts behind it. I want to build it, as General Simmerly and all of us say, being positively intrusive helps you understand I really care about you. And I want to know more, not just a casual good morning, and then you don't even wait for the answer. So, So thank you so much for that. Ma'am, I see we have a hand up in the room. Captain Mary Tang, one of our company commanders out here, who is doing great and wonderful things for our AIT soldiers in her permanent party cadre. So Captain Tang, please feel free to ask your question.
Hello, ma'am, sir. So my question is, since I am a TRADOC company commander for an AIT student, how do we build more trust with the students versus those that are in FORSCOM? Because I noticed that when I was a platoon leader, I was able to build a lot more trust with my soldiers and have them open up to me candidly without having to hold anything back. But here in the TRADOC environment, a lot of soldiers tend to hold and reserve all of their comments to themselves. How do I continue to build that trust with them despite having the battle circulations throughout the week?
And I will have General Horoho answer that question first, and then General Simmerly. But I'll add to what she's saying, because the AIT students only stay a certain amount of time. How do we quickly build that trust? I know is what she's saying, because she and I have had a dialogue about it. How do we quickly build that trust to help them feel comfortable enough to address the concerns before they go to their first unit of assignment. And so it was a great question, I believe. And so ma'am, would you like to address that first, and then we'll give it to General Secretary?
Sure, I'll give a try for it. I think, when that population, one, it's a short time that you're with them, right? So it's a condensed period of time to be able to build trust with them and relationship. They're also, if you think about it, it's a very scary, nervous time for them, because it's unfamiliar territory for them, and they're learning to adjust, and they're learning a lot about themselves. One of the things that I think I've found at certain situation that works is you get individuals together, try to find what's the commonality between them. And that commonality shouldn't be the Army, because that's an obvious, right? So something different. What's the commonality? Give them an issue or a topic or something you want them to solve, because then it can allow them to come together as a team and be able to have that rapport with you. And once they realize that you're open to hearing their voice, they'll then be maybe a little more trusting to be able to share other concerns. So it's just an idea. No,
it was a great idea, ma'am. We actually, that concept, I believe TRADOC is provided to all of us on the new, it's not even a new concept, but it's a concept that is effective that we just really started focusing on, which is the team building events that engage, have our leaders engage with our soldiers so that they can build that relationship. So absolutely great advice, ma'am. General Simmerly?
I think it's a great question, and it really helps to gain an appreciation for leadership challenges that we have in the TRADOC environment, where you've got a population that's dynamic, that quickly changes over. So there's absolutely some challenges there, and I think General Rojo offered some great suggestions for that. What I'd recommend is, first of all, in any environment, it's real important that you set the right tone and you establish a climate of a positive nature. And you do that certainly, in a positive leadership environment, not only has a focus on standards, but also has a focus on empathy. And the way that you're really going to be able to make that contact and make that clear is through the climate you have within the organization that includes your cadre. So the way they behave should reflect you and your values, and should reflect not only that adherence to standards, but also that empathetic leadership approach where you want them all to succeed, and it's all very clear to them that you want them to succeed. So that's one point in terms of climate. The second point I'll make is, and this is, I think, true in every leadership role, including yours, is ultimately your subordinates are going to judge you on the way that you fulfill your responsibilities. And many of you may know this, that one of the most common complaints against Army senior leaders or investigations is failure to act. So when you fail to act as a leader to fulfill your responsibilities, to maintain good conduct and order and discipline in the organization, to set a positive climate for the organization, and to ensure that the organization is accomplishing its mission. Those are all responsibilities that you have as a commander inherent in your role. And so when you fulfill your responsibilities, you establish a climate that's not only positive, but also effective. So those are two coaching points I'd give you: climate and then fulfilling your responsibilities as a commander.
Well, sir, thank you so much. Both of those were great answers to that question. It was a great question. And to understand that the company command teams and battalion command teams and brigade command, we have to keep doing those things to try to get after helping to engage them. And I'll tell you, sir, the comment, you just made me remember it. And some of you all that are on here that I know personally that grew up within the military may remember this, but we always heard it's better to overreact than to not react at all, because by not reacting, you're not doing anything. Overreacting, that shows the passion that there's something there that you want to handle, take care of, and then somebody can pull us back, but at least we're engaging. And so I appreciate both of you all providing that insight, because that's exactly what leaders need to understand. All right, we have a lineup of a few people, but so I'm going to start with Captain Christina Stevens, which the name says Durham, but she was newly married in December, so congratulations again. But Captain Stevens, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am, sir.
Good evening.
So over the past couple of days, we've been doing our COVID counselings for soldiers, just saying by December 15th, we had to be vaccinated. Speaking on trust, how do you continue to build that trust with your soldiers when you're giving them such an ultimatum and I guess life-changing decision to make? I felt like when we were speaking, they were not as trusting as we'd like them to be, because we're ultimately saying that, get the shot or get out. So how do we build that trust and let them know that we're still on their side, but we need to do this because this is what Army says we need to do to protect, everyone around us?
So,
Mark-
sir, I will let you take that because I know that is, and then I definitely want General Horoho to answer that question because I know she has quite a big hand in what's going on right now, ma'am. Am I correct?
Yes.
So, sir, I'll let you go, and then she can tell us the big picture of what's really going on in America. Sir?
All right, thank you. So, really important question, right? And it's an important time for our country, an important time for our Army, and we really want to get this right. And the tone that we want to set within TRADOC and certainly within CASCOM here at Fort Lee is one where we're educating and counseling all of our team members about this decision that our nation has made, the Army has made, to ensure we can best protect our readiness against COVID-19. And we do that through this vaccination. And just as we do it against other vectors and threats. So this is consistent with the Army, the way the Army has acted historically. It's consistent with all of our other decisions on how we protect the force. And as a commander, it's very important that you describe to your soldiers that your responsibility is to uphold the Army standards, explain those standards and why they're important, and do it in an empathetic way that not only helps to inform them of what their choices are and what the consequences are, but also your hope that they're going to conform with the Army standard to enhance their readiness, but also to enhance the readiness of the entire force. So I know that may not be the best answer, but I think it'd be the approach that I would take initially. Over.
Absolutely a great answer, sir. And that's what we as leaders have to do, is uphold the laws and the orders. And if it's a mandate, that's our job. So it's not really us making them get out. It's adhering to the Army mandates. And, it's not a personal thing for me to tell a person to do it. I'm upholding what the Army tells me to do. And so absolutely great answer, sir. Ma'am, we're excited to hear your part of it because I know you have an intricate role in it. So
yeah. So with this pandemic, have been very intimately engaged with it. We've done like over 5 million COVID tests and getting close to 700,000 on vaccinations across 27 states. So we're doing a lot in that area. We're doing a lot in the area of health equity because if nothing else, COVID has really shown that this virus affects those that have poor health care, different ethnicities over others. And it really, shows where we've got some health gaps and deserts across our country. So I think what I would do is kind of raising it from the bigger picture. Unfortunately, this became political. And it is a public health issue, but it became a political issue. And it became a political issue in a time when our country is just very divided. And so I think we just as leaders have to acknowledge that is, and we can't, ignore that because that is the environment, that's the background. And then you add media and social media and so much incorrect information that's out there. I think one of the important things is, when talking to them, is that this vaccine has been in research for almost 20 years. So it's not like it was just created overnight. It has been, in research for many, many years. And thank goodness that had occurred because it allowed then it to actually be fast tracked through FDA to be able to get enhanced use to save, hundreds of thousands of lives over this past year. I think the other piece that I would say to them is that in the military, we have always had to take vaccinations and immunizations. This is not the first time we've been told as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines of what protective mechanisms or measures we need to take. We have to respond around the globe And we have to be ready to do that. And in order to be ready to do that, you have to make sure you yourself are protected, your teammates are protected, so that you are mission ready. And this is a way to do that. And then I think I would also, in the trust category, because we're doing this a lot, is two things. One, who carries that message is important. When I look at it from America, and I've gotten a lot of feedback because we've done some sensing sessions and that with younger Americans. The spokesperson, Dr. Fauci, is world renowned, right? He's an older gentleman. The youth of America, some do not resonate with him. And so we probably should have looked at a communication narrative and package, right? And strategy and it gets back to diversity. Trust is built by who delivers the message. And what we found when we went out to different communities is we could go down to the zip code level and tell you who was most vulnerable for COVID. And then we set up a Stop COVID program. What we found is we needed to make sure that those that were delivering the test and the vaccine looked like the people they were treating. Because if they didn't look like the people they were treating, there was distrust right off the bat because of all this political background, right? So we've got to look at who's carrying the message. Yes, the line of leadership needs to carry it, but there's also influencers within every unit, right? They may not be in the leadership position, but they're people who other soldiers listen to. Have them help you carry that message and make sure it's the message that's aligned, right, with the chain of command, but help them carry that message. And then also the message of still learning. We are constantly learning with this virus, and it's going to constantly mutate. So the Army and the Secretary of Defense is giving and making the best decision they can based on the available information. And as that information changes, then policies and practices change with it.
Wow, ma'am, that was honestly a great, just the way you all put it, both of you put it, but to use the influencers, you're absolutely right. I had to explain to some of my own friends and family members that are my peers growing up why I chose to get it and why I was eager to get it, because when I got my first vaccine shot, I felt like I had a coat of armor on just because it's a vaccine. And so helping them understand, because I looked like them, I was able to help them understand that I can do it and I'm here, but they wouldn't have heard it from anyone else. And you're absolutely right on the Dr. Fauci. He didn't look like them, they didn't listen. And
Right.
Of course, I'll just say, being an African-American female, the African-American community has reservations about it because of the historical aspects of being
Absolutely.
test subjects and things like that. So we have to educate them and get them through understanding everyone's taking the same shots, not just we're being placed in. So we have to bring them back to understanding the difference of what has happened in,
right.
where we've changed, where
Ground
we're
them in
hoping to go
facts.
to. Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. That both of you had a great answer for that one. I'm going to go to now Miss Tamisha's iPhone. So Miss Tamisha, I will let you ask your question.
Hi, ma'am. This is Command Sergeant Major Love. How you doing?
Well, there you go,
pleasure.
Tamisha, Command Sergeant Major Love.
First, I want to thank the awesome leaders on this forum for giving us information and the mentorship. The question is directed to both of you all. I know General Assembly spoke about the female that he had engagement with that felt sorry for being pregnant. And ma'am, you talked about psychological safety. So across the force, there's no secret that there's very few that command sergeant majors and battalion commanders above that are willing to get pregnant. And without them feeling guilty about getting pregnant or one of them got stepped down. And I definitely, for one, as a command sergeant major, can relate to that. From when I got pregnant when I was a command sergeant major, I felt like my leadership didn't know what to do with me. Did they know whether to ask me to step down, whether they were more concerned for my safety or more concerned about not ever experiencing a command sergeant major being pregnant before. So my question to you all, what can we do to change that culture and make more females, whether commanders and command sergeant major, feel comfortable starting a family, no matter how late it is, or making sure it's okay that it being pregnant do not degrade your leadership in leading soldiers?
So we'll let General Simmerly answer that question first, and then ma'am, we'll let you take it.
Ma'am, I saw you getting ready to talk, and I know you got a
Oh, I'm
brilliant
sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's such an important question, and I think it really gets down to knowing your people, number one. So as you get to understand your subordinates, especially those who are direct reports to you, you should know about them and their desires for their career, their desires for their family, and talk to them openly about what they're seeking to achieve, so that they are not themselves trying to create a false choice because you're not speaking to them about it, and other leaders around them are silent. And so you should encourage your subordinates, your female subordinates, to talk to leaders about it, to explain what they want to achieve and help coach them on how they can best do that while they balance their career, and have some good fact-based conversations about that. We know that timing is very important, but it doesn't always work that way, right? We can't time that perfectly. It's not a on and off switch that we press, and I know that from my own family experience. So you have to encourage those folks, and there can't be any perceived consequences. And you can't have somebody removed from a position of responsibility because of that. In fact, as I told this leader who spoke to me recently, that was great news, and it's incumbent upon me to find ways to help to accommodate that within the organization, so that we can continue to accomplish the mission, but also take care of that leader so they can take care of their responsibilities. And that way we can retain leaders who can continue to serve, continue to contribute, and they themselves can be great examples within their formation.
Sir, that was a great answer, ma'am. I'm excited to hear your answer as well.
Well, I don't know if it'll be that impressive, but having I was back-to-back pregnancies, not planned, when I was the head nurse of the emergency room at Fort Bragg, and I worked all the way up till I was 10 days late in my pregnancies, both of them, and worked all the way up. Doesn't mean that's the way to do it, but pregnancy is it's just a fact of life. It is not an illness. It's not it's just part of life. And so I think the more that we as leaders at all level act that it is no different, we accommodate when we need to, right? Because sometimes you do need to accommodate as the pregnancy advances. But to be perfectly honest, how we act as individuals when we have someone pregnant in our command is how others are going to act with that, because you really will set the tone from your verbal and nonverbals. I think the other piece of it is there's a culture change that's occurring, and I see it in corporate America, where men are taking time off to raise, right, the Family Medical Leave Act, and they're taking time off, and they want to be home with that child. There's a culture change that is occurring, and when things change across America, they also change across our Army. And so I think one of the things we need to be prepared for is kind of the mental piece for fathers, or a significant other who wants to be as active and have that time, because that's going to be some of the pressure. And so what I would just say is go out of your way if you are pregnant to and you've gone through this, to be a role model for others. What I found in 2008, when I became the Corps Chief, it was the first time in 90 something years that they ever had a female that was married with children. So a majority of my career, I didn't have role models to look to say, how do you balance this? How do you do this, right? And it's a lot. It's a lot to handle, raising kids and doing your career. And so what I would say is have good support groups that are out there. Our Army is based on the team concept. Raising children, I think, is a team sport sometimes in the Army, that so that you can keep doing your mission, you need to be able to have a good network of support. So make sure that that's there. And I think how you carry yourself is how people will react. I don't know if that answered or not, but
Oh, that was great, ma'am. No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it made me, and for the audience, one of the key reasons we made this an all-inclusive program, women can preach to each other all day long. We can talk about our woe is me's because we're normally, most of us go through the exact same thing or have been through, and
right.
we can just share with the next generation. It's our male counterparts who have to hear these conversations and help their male counterparts or male brothers understand that we are a family and we have to give each other the opportunities. I often tell my trainees, if your wife, mother, daughter, girlfriend, or niece came home and told you that someone told them they couldn't do something, how would you feel? If
Right.
your mom came home in tears, your mom, how would you feel? So then just imagine we are somebody's wife, daughter, mother, girlfriend. So treat us the same, that you would have that same passion for them. And so it's important, it's vital for this program's success to have our male counterparts understand where we stand, because we want to serve valiantly too. We want to go out there and do the things that they want to do. Just because we're females does not mean we have a lesser point of view or less dedication and support to what we want to fight for as well. And then the other part of it is
Well
the
said.
purpose of understanding that when we are making these decisions, I know, and some of them are sitting on here, and I remember the days of, I almost, just like General Simile said, we almost felt embarrassed to tell them that we had to do female things, but it's a part of our life. But our counterparts, our male counterparts, have to understand, hey, absolutely, you have to show the leaders the right way to lead. And so a leader showing them, hey, let's embrace this new pregnant woman. Let's make sure you're safe. Let's make sure you're going to
Yes,
do the right
absolutely.
things. Make sure you time it right if you can. But he's absolutely right. You can't time pregnancies. Although I tried to as best I could. I think I was, but it didn't. But, having those conscious decisions and talking through with your leaders, asking for that mentorship. That's why this program is what it is. We learn from those who've been through. And for everyone that's a junior leader on here or a junior enlisted soldier, to hear those who came before us, who went before us, who've gone before us, what they've gone through and how we've gotten through our battles is why we do this, so that others can have free knowledge. That's what I call it. It's free knowledge.
It's and dignity and respect, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we have another question, Miss Carol Hawkins.
Hey, ma'am. Thank you. Sir, ma'am, thank you for taking the opportunity today to talk to us. This is very valuable knowledge. And I'm at the Major General Rights program right now, so I'm taking a year off to go to William and Mary in the academic environment. So I'm getting my business perspective lens right now. So
I love it.
Definitely kind of tying it in on. My question is, the big one I have is, we talk about building trust, but really, what are your recommendations and advice on how you create that psychological safe environment that you're speaking of, when it's not counterproductive leadership, it's not counterproductive environments, it's just simply a lack of education or knowledge in that diversity. As we navigate that diversity, equity, and inclusion space, I think there's going to be we need to offer space and grace for individuals to learn and develop. So at the end of the day, like, we want to cultivate a progressive military that's full of lifelong learners. So how do we breed that environment and support that environment? Just looking for advice and recommendations in that area. Thank you.
Ma'am, would you like to take that one first?
Yeah, it's a great, I love it. It's a great question. I think probably the first thing I would say is we don't pay enough attention to inclusion. And I've realized that probably over the last 2 years, it's really come to light for me. So we can have a false sense of security because we have a very diverse team, right? And you can look around your team and think you have all of the diversity and ethnicity, thought, gender, right, and all of that. But if by your behaviors as a leader, you don't make people feel welcome and included, they then feel like they're not seen. And it doesn't matter how diverse your team is, you are sending signals that they're not important. And so I think what's important and what I found to be helpful is, one, being very consistent. Authenticity is probably the very first thing I would say. You have to be authentic because you can say the right things, but if your actions, I always say audio doesn't match video, to be honest, you lose your credibility right from the start. And then once you've lost it, it's very hard to regain it. So be very authentic. Make sure you know yourself first. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know your vulnerabilities. Know what your leadership shadow is when you're under stress. Because when you're under stress, sometimes our leadership shadow is not big enough or is not the type that we want to have out there for everybody. And that leadership shadow is very important. Be here now. We talk a lot about that in our job. Be here now. Know what your mood elevator is before you go into meetings, before you engage with people, so that you make sure that you're at the right mindset before you're engaging, and then be very consistent. What I found is psychological safety is enhanced when they know a leader is consistent in how they make decisions, is consistent on what, Mark brought up earlier about being a standard barrier, right? When you have consistency with what the standards are and how what you're going to tolerate and what you're not, that then allows people to know their right and left limits. And that also creates a kind of a psychological ecosystem.
That was great, ma'am. Thank you so much. General Simmerly?
Hey, ma'am, I think we could write a book with what you just talked about, with those elements of leadership. That certainly apply to the question, but they also apply broadly about leadership in general. So thanks for that. And I took down leadership shadow as something that I'm probably going to include in my vocabulary as I go forward, because we all cast a shadow. And whether it's whatever it is in terms of our intention is really not important. What is the effect, though, of that shadow that we're casting?
Well said.
Is what we have to consider. And so I think, to the question, and Kara Hawkins, I really appreciate the way you phrased it. We have to be very thoughtful about this in this day, in this time. And I'll just say, going back over a year ago, I was in a command with really a fantastic leader. And this leader at the time of unrest in our nation in the summer of 20 made some pretty broad statements that were revealing in terms of his view of our world and his view of our Army. And at the time, I was a subordinate commander underneath this 4-star. And as we're looking at the unrest that was taking place in our nation, I was in an overseas location, and many of my fellow commanders and my subordinate commanders were talking about how we could respond, or how we should respond if there were demonstrations of people. And we were thinking about, in many cases, how we might respond or even try to limit those expressions of concern. And what he said up front was, look, we need to open the doors. We need to ensure that everybody has a voice that we're going to listen to, and we have a problem that we have to deal with. So let's start dealing with the problem. And the way we deal with the problem is through dialogue, through communications. And so when he made that comment, it just really lifted a burden, I think, off of all those commanders, because they understood what was on his heart, and they understood that he was going to allow us to have room for that dialogue. And I just saw so many positive things happen in that environment when that occurred, when that one leader set the example, and he expressed very clearly that there was a problem that we had to deal with, that there was adversity out there that we were subjecting an important portion of our formation to, and that we had an obligation to deal with it directly. And I would say he put himself at risk in some ways at that time by making some pretty broad statements, but he understood that risk, and he weighed that against the importance of addressing challenges we had in our formation. I gained enormous respect for him, and I thought it was a great leadership example that he provided us. And so, I think we have to empower our leaders, and the best way we empower our leaders is through our example, by being willing to address some of the challenges that are out there directly, to talk to our subordinates about them, to talk about how that fits within the framework of our Army, our standards, and our values, and how it's beneficial to recognize that we've got challenges and that we have an obligation to address them.
Well, sir, thank you so much. Great answers to both of those. Both answers are great to the question. I have a question from the chat room before we go back to answering hands that are raised. This question is for Major General Simmerly. How would you positively empower your female peers or your female subordinates in a public setting? So how do leaders empower their female peers or female subordinates? Just so you know, last session we had a captain from ALU brought out that in her room there's only a handful of females, and in the room every time she got ready to speak out or speak to something in the classroom, the males in the room made her feel, like she needed to be quiet, and she felt intimidated to the point of she didn't want to even ask the question. So from this session, she became more empowered to be able to feel like she had a support system behind her to go out and engage in that class. But how do other leaders, how do we get them engaged? Like I say, if they're not involved in this program, how do we empower them in public to make them feel that, stand my ground now? Because every time we leave and don't address an issue, we always get home and like, man, I should have said this. Wow, the next time I get out there, I'm going to say this. And I've said this to the team before, but that second opportunity normally sometimes just doesn't even come. And so you almost kick yourself for not saying something. But how do we do that? How do we help our females or empower them and our subordinates in a public setting? Sir, I'll let you answer that question first, and then ma'am, I'll definitely.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. And what I would start off with is we have an obligation to treat all of our peers equally, and to grant them every opportunity that you can, and encourage them every opportunity you can to succeed. And that's whether they're female or not, or a minority, or anybody who might need a voice in the room. And so, number one, so if as I said, treat everybody equally, treat them all with kindness and encouragement. And I think when you're talking about peers, you have an obligation to treat everybody in a way that offers mutual support. So, I think of a group of commanders. And so, the commanders who succeed are those who help those around them. And so, if you want to be the best company commander in a battalion, you're going to put a lot of your focus not on just making sure your formation is the best, but those commanders around you are also successful at the same time. So I think that's true regardless of gender, of your peers, and it's certainly true for your subordinates. When you're talking about subordinates, you want to treat them equally as well. You want to give them every opportunity to perform, and then you want to recognize their achievements when they meet the mark, and then encourage them. And of course, it always gets down to counseling as well. How do you coach, teach, and mentor for success? And how do you tailor that coaching and teaching and mentoring for each individual based upon their needs, because you know them, you know their strengths and weaknesses, you know their aspirations, and you can talk to them very clearly about those.
Thanks so much, sir. That was great. Ma'am?
I think he hit a home run. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think there's anything to add. Nice job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, we have a hand up, and I will say Fort Lee FMMP, which is normally Major Mari Lee. Major Mari Lee, is that yours? That CJ Captain Estelle?
That's me, ma'am, Major Lee. Sir, you accurately defined earlier what an important time in history we are sitting in right now, and how we are shaping, in fact, the future of our military, and we got to get it right this time. We have one chance to get it right. And ma'am, you also mentioned earlier how one time you learned a lesson how not to give up your power willingly. So my question to you both is, how do we create a culture in the Army that empowers our female leaders to be active participant in the culture and be able to stop it at the lowest level, at their level, feeling that empowered instead of becoming victims? How do we do that? How do we empower where that soldier feels that she could say, stop, I did not appreciate this, and gain their voice instead of losing that voice that we so willingly give up?
And so With that question being asked, I'm going to add to what Mari said. I actually went to a behavioral health specialist myself. I go see behavioral health if I have insomnia. Sharing that with you, I tell my soldiers I go to behavioral health to seek whatever free, care the military gives us. But during my conversations with the behavioral health specialist, we always engage in the conversations of who comes to see her. And who comes to see her are the majority of them have been women who have just lost the fight. And because there's no one in there that's standing with them, helping them stand their ground, how do we help them? And as a matter of fact, she's going to refer some of her, her clients that come in to talk to them, you need a support system. And she's referring them to the FMNP. But the question of empowerment has come up a number of times in just this discussion alone. And so it's a clear sign to you all that lets you know that we still have those pockets or those huge areas where women are not receiving that support and feeling empowered. They're probably feeling bullied, hazed, or it's so many around them that they don't stand up. And for the lack of, let's just say, assertiveness or aggressiveness, they choose to get out. So we lose so much great talent because they just choose to stop fighting. So I add that to it so that as you think about the response that you're going to give, those are some of the things that that even our behavioral health specialists are dealing with on a daily basis to help try to keep some of our leaders and our female service members in the military. Ma'am, I'll let you address that one.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I was just writing myself a couple of notes as you were talking. I think I'll do a storytelling real quick, but the first thing that I want to say is it really is one interaction at a time. And it's personal, being personally engaged and personally involved, and being a champion for our young women that are out there, because they're not going to ask for it. Very few are going to ask for it. You've got to be the one that gets personally engaged and seeks it out. And I'll give two examples. The first one was when I was in Afghanistan. One of the things as I was traveling around late at night, I thought being the senior female in theater, I just started doing some sensing sessions. And what I found out is we had one behavioral health, one size fits all for our military. And when women came back, they experienced their deployment very differently. Many of our reserve females felt guilty because when they came back, they didn't feel as, when they assimilated back into their family, they really felt more important when they were doing their military job than they were doing their family job or their civilian job. And they had this conflicted guilt with that, and they didn't know who to share that with. And they experienced, men and women experience things very differently. So I think one, we have to be engaged enough to find out really what the true issues are so that you're solving the right issue and you're not assuming you think you know what that young female, right, is encountering. The second piece is when we see something wrong, and I was a major, there was a lieutenant colonel who was just so disrespectful to this young captain when we were at JRTC, and I was an observer controller with the lieutenant colonel. And it got to the point where I thought, I just can't tolerate it. And I confronted him, and he didn't stop. And he was actually even more, ignorant about things. And I made a decision, it was worth me losing my career to be the advocate for that young captain. And I actually went to the CG, the 44th Med Brigade CG, and I laid everything out. And I just said, it's inexcusable behavior to have a lieutenant colonel do these types of things. And I share that with you because sometimes you have to have personal risk that you're willing to take. If you see something and you don't act, you are just as complicit as the individual that is doing that. And so that would be my advice is be personally engaged. It starts from the top and it cascades down. And so from every level, if all of us creates the right environment, then it makes it easy for that young female to feel like they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, and they're part of the team.
Awesome, ma'am. Thank you so much. Sir?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one to add to, ma'am. Appreciate that response. What I'll say, and it's really kind of the way you finished, ma'am, was it really is dependent upon your entire leadership environment that you create.
Mhm.
You've got a positive leadership environment. That means you're providing opportunities for everybody to succeed. You want everybody to be successful in their endeavors in that organization, and also to be able to fulfill their potential within their career. But that doesn't mean that you always treat everybody the same. You do have to provide some opportunities for others. And so you may select a task that you provide somebody with that needs that developmental opportunity, not just to demonstrate to their peers, not just to demonstrate to their subordinates, but even to demonstrate to themselves that they're capable of it. So you should be grooming your subordinates with the tasks that you give them and the expectations that you manage. And again, as I said before, that's regardless of any special characteristic of any member of your team. You should have a tailored approach for every single subordinate that you have. And then, when you help to coach them through those tasks and that task accomplishment, go back then and help them reflect on what they've accomplished. Give them the confidence they could do it again if they're given a similar set of responsibilities, and then recognize them for what they've done in front of the team as a way to encourage it. And it shouldn't be motivated by anything other than the importance of the mission and also the welfare of that individual that you're counseling and trying to develop.
Cool, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go to Dawn. Dawn, do you have a question?
Yes, hi. First of all, I want to thank you all for having this session this evening. I'm a manager at Army Contracting Command Redstone, and my team is half men, half women. I'm able to relate to the issues that the women go through. What are the suggestions on how I can better relate to what the men are going through? Because a lot of times they're not willing to express or to share, what's going on with them. So how do you all recommend I better posture myself for that?
Sir, I'm going to let you take that question first.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And what I'd say is ask them. Ask them what's on their mind. Ask them what they might be challenged with. Ask them what they're trying to achieve. And that's really about getting to know them, and then you can relate to them on that level. And it's true. I think we have some people who are more willing to describe what they're experiencing, more willing to describe any problems they have than others. And we've got other more silent partners on our teams that we have to engage with in a different way. And sometimes that direct approach, asking them, may work. In other cases, you just have to listen for other cues at the same time. What is it that they want to share? And then that may take a little bit of time and certainly, some focused attention on those teammates. But I'd start off with the direct approach, which is asking them on what it is that they're trying to get out of the workplace.
And
Cool,
the
sir.
only thing that I would add is I have found sometimes we do check-ins. I did it when I was on active duty, and we'll do that sometimes in our meeting. And you just kind of go around the room with everybody and check in, and you say, hey, how'd your weekend go? Tell me something, that we don't know. Or when we get together, we'll say, what's something that someone would be surprised to know about you. And when you start doing that, it's amazing what people will open up about. Once you start knowing the person outside of their work environment and you know them, you then start having a personal connection where they feel a little bit more comfortable sharing. And then the other thing is one-on-one meetings. I do a lot of the one-on-one meetings. People tend to open up when you do that, both male and female, and then watch the nonverbals. Because people can say one thing and their nonverbals tell a totally different story.
That was a great answer, ma'am and sir. And I will tell you to offer a question to Dawn and offer an answer. Another forms or methods, General Horho mentioned it earlier about sensing sessions. I will tell you, we found in my own brigade, I separated the genders to have them have their safe environments to talk through their issues, because that 3-letter curse word ego keeps people from speaking out. And so sometimes you may just have to have the men together and just talk through some of their issues, because someone's going to say something that might trigger someone else to say something. And then next thing you know, you got a dialogue going, but they don't feel like they're being challenged when they have their counterparts there. They're not there, so they can just talk amongst themselves. And then if you have the opportunity, then bringing them back together to address their issues, whether it be a person that's there as a mouthpiece to facilitate the conversation, but at least you have them the ability to talk through them and take them. You don't have to pull out a name, as Colonel Pritchard Brown said. It's the conversation came up, there's a trend or some conversation. So just wanted to add that as another technique to getting after how do you identify with the male counterparts or your male counterparts there, and then help them work together with the females so that they can bridge the gap between the communication line. So thank you so much for both of those answers, ma'am and sir. So we had another question. Well, Ms. Kara Hawkins, I know you have a question, and before you ask the question, I just want everyone to know it's 19:30. But I'm more than happy to continue going. And ma'am and sir, truly, this is your show. This is your evening, and we truly appreciate everything you're doing. So before we go to the next question, are we good on time? Maybe 15 minutes more? You just let me know.
I will go as long as my earpiece is the power in it, and then it'll die. So I think I've got a couple more minutes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir, I know you're a very busy person, probably 50 million phone calls are coming in, but do you have a few more minutes with us tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing more important that I'm doing tonight than this. So thanks for the time. By the way, I did see General Robin Aiken raising her hand a short time ago.
There you go,
so I know
right.
he also wants to contribute a question or a comment.
Ma'am, I'm gonna let you speak. General Aiken knows she's my hero too, so she's my shero. So ma'am, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Hey, Mark, it's great seeing you as a CASCOM commander. I didn't challenge you enough at the Warfighter, I guess, but it's all goodness. So, hey, I would just let you know that one of the handicaps I had as a leader is I didn't reveal my PTSD to my leaders and my soldiers. And having been blown up with my driver in Iraq, as my husband did, you know, if we had revealed those things, maybe we had more people discussing it. And we didn't. And so that's a challenge as leaders. We don't want to build upon our inequities or our problem sets. We would just want to lead from example. And sometimes we need to lead from example with our problem sets. And so I'll just leave that to you. And Patty, it's great to see you. My best friend,
Likewise.
Peggy Wilmoth, loves you to death.
I love Peggy. We're back at.
We need to get her on because she's got some great stories too. But that's what I'd leave you with. And this forum, I think I missed one in a year. And so I really appreciate Colonel Pritchard Brown doing this. And I can't wait for every fourth Thursday of the month to do this. So God bless you and farewell from Fort Worth.
Thank you for
so
sharing. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story. And I think it's the power of being vulnerable as a leader. I think we underestimate just how powerful that is. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Ma'am. And I'll tell you, she's heard this before when we talk about what our younger generations see. They only see us as generals, colonels, lieutenant colonels, and they seem to think we were born that rank. They don't know that we were them once before, even though the generations have changed, but we have to let them know. Just, you know, for some of you already know, I put my picture as PFC Pritchard. Right next to my picture is Colonel Pritchard Brown on their screen. And when I pull it up, they're like, what? Yes, I was you once. And so sometimes we just have to humble ourselves and come down to bringing our lives out. And just like General Aiken said, and ma'am, you know, it's always an honor for me to see you on the line. And thank you so much for all the support. But she's absolutely right. Letting them know what we've been through, telling them we go to behavioral health helps emphasize the importance of behavioral health. What the leader goes, yes, and behavioral health is not there to just kick you out of the Army. And most kids think that, and I say kids being the young trainees that come in. And so promoting that is what we have to do. We have to encourage them to use what the Army has available, but we have to show them that we use it too. So thank you so much for that, ma'am. I think we had another question. Is there anyone else? I know CJ, Captain Estelle had a question. Captain Estelle, would you like to ask the question even though your hand is not raised?
Ma'am, good afternoon, everyone. Captain Still here from AOU Fort Lee, Virginia. General Simmerly already answered the question in the chat. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And just a testament, I was that company commander who was on crutches, who had my knee surgery in the middle of command, and having that vulnerable moment and able to actually talk to my leader and say, hey, sir, I've rode enough. I need to take a knee just to have this surgery. And he kept me in command, and I was successful and victorious, thank God. But I didn't initially take that knee, and it caused me to break my knee again. But I kept doing it, and my leader supported me in my decisions, and I was comfortable enough to say, hey, I'm pregnant, in command, just had a knee surgery, but I still want to deploy with my troops to the border. So, we make those decisions and those mistakes, and that ultimately led to a miscarriage of my own. And I'm blessed. I am honorable to say I did what I had to do for my company, but that's something that I deal with. And it wasn't just me. I had 13 female soldiers while in command who had a miscarriage, and I was the 13th. So I take that one to heart. And ma'am, General Aiken, for you saying that, we have to share those things. So I just felt led to share that tonight. That's something that I endured. It's something that I went through, and it still sticks to me every July. That's what I think about. So thank you again, sir, for sharing with me, and General Aiken for making me feel comfortable enough to share that.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, CJ. And I want to go back to Kara Hawkins. I'm so sorry we didn't get a chance to get her question. Or Kara, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I'm just trying to be cognizant of people's time. But yeah, I'll ask it if you're giving me an opportunity. That just going back to the social stigma of women being a diverse, or women or minorities at all being a diverse hire. You kind of hear that sometimes, and it's almost like you're under the impression that they're sacrificing talent for diversity on a team. So just seeing if you guys think that there's a way that stigma is going to go away, or is it going to dissolve over time as people get educated? Because it does take people being vulnerable, but it does take, it makes you question your own talents and your own belongingness, and were you the right fit for that team? So I was just going to see if you could get the perspective on that.
Great question, ma'am. Would you like to answer that?
I think it's actually a really powerful comment and question that you're raising. We will always deal with this issue, or maybe the day we won't deal with this issue is when truly people look at the characteristics of leadership, and they look to say, do I have the right characteristics of leadership around the table or in the right roles? When they look at it through the lens of the charactership or the characteristics, vice whether they have a male or a female, or an African American or an Asian, right? Or American Indian. When you have to look through all those lenses, when people bring it down to the lens, to me, they miss the strength of really what's behind diversity and inclusion. And so what I would say is, the more we can look at positions and define those positions through the lens of what's the leadership traits that we need, what's the characteristics of the individual that we want in there, and we fill positions that way, then to be honest, the right talent will always rise. And there is talent across all diversity. But as soon as we say, we don't have enough females on the slate, or we don't have enough, whatever on a slate, you automatically then make people feel, in my opinion, you make people feel like you are making it less, right? Less competitive, or less of a position. And in actuality, the reason why you want the diversity in it is you want to raise the water level. You want to have all of that talent to be able to look across and pick the very best. Because if we only pick people that look like us, think like this, or has the same experience, we have tremendous blind spots that are out there, and we will never be the best that we can be. And so I don't know if I answered that, but I think the way that we talk is going to be very important. And so I think our narrative, our sound bites, needs to be more around all the value that the diverse team brings and what they accomplish together, vice the composition of the team.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much. General Simmerly?
I think it's a great question. And, I'll just say I have a great deal of hope. And I've seen tremendous progress in our profession in my over 30 years in many ways, it's fundamentally different as a Army professional than it was 30 years ago. And our willingness to accept others who before we wouldn't accept or didn't trust with responsibilities, I think has changed dramatically. And if you just look at the composition of the leaders on this session, plus a lot of the other leaders that we see in our formations that continue to succeed, you have so many examples of people who are succeeding because of their innate capabilities, but also because of the trust they've been given, because of their demonstrated potential for success, regardless of gender, regardless of any other consideration. But I'm not unrealistic, right? We know that we have many other challenges to overcome. And for me, it really kind of comes down to who can perform when they're given the opportunity. And we know that we're not affected by our gender, by our race, by our religion, and that ability to perform. And commanders want people who are going to be able to execute the mission and take care of their people at the same time. And when you demonstrate that, you're going to be given more responsibility and you're going to be given more opportunities to succeed. And that's going to continue to set the example. And I can tell you as a brigade commander and as a battalion commander, I had both male and female commanders that were subordinate to me. And I was just very fortunate in both of those circumstances. My strongest leaders were the female company and battalion commanders that I had, not as a class, but if I were to pick one individual, one company commander, one battalion commander that was the strongest, they happened to be female. And I say they happened to be because I wasn't judging them based upon their gender. I was judging them based upon the outcome, the teams that they built and the way that they accomplished missions. And so, that's why I'm hopeful, because I know that we have so many strong leaders in our midst that are setting the example every single day. And I know that there are leaders who recognize that potential. And then, not only the potential in those individuals, but the potential within our force and within our nation when we recognize the strength and diversity. And we recognize the fact that we need the strong members from every component of our society to be able to perform in our profession.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think it stands, I think it is very important for me to recognize one thing that some of you may not know. I tweeted about it not too long ago, so if you tweet, make sure you read my tweets. But I want to recognize both Major General Rodney Fogg and Major General Mark Simmerly for leading Fort Lee into the future. We here on Fort Lee have the most females in senior leadership positions that Fort Lee's ever had. We have a total of 8 females. I'm going to list them for you. We have Command Sergeant Major Love, who we heard earlier tonight. She is the Garrison Command Sergeant Major. Her battle buddy is Colonel Karen Watson. So she's the Garrison Commander. We have the team of General Michelle Donahue, along with Command Sergeant Major Scott, a female duo team that are the Commandant and Command Sergeant Major of the Quartermaster Corps. We have Colonel Tony Reike, who's the brigade commander of the 23rd Quartermaster Brigade. You have yours truly, who's the brigade commander of the 59th Ordnance Brigade. And you have former Colonel, now ALU President, SES, Sydney Smith, who is the ALU president, and her Command Sergeant Major is Command Sergeant Major Cisneros, who's another female. So just that alone is the significant recognition that we have to do when we move things into the future and show our counterparts and show our younger generations that it can happen. And I applaud General Fogg and General Simmerly and in the Army for just being able to allow us to have these positions, not by looking at our gender or saying they had to fill a quota, but by understanding that we are truly qualified, as our brothers were, and we're qualified despite the gender, and in spite of, and regardless of, we are qualified for these positions, and we hold it just as dear to our hearts as our male counterparts would. So thank you both, General Fogg, General Simmerly, and ma'am, again, thank you for just answering that question and then just leading us into the future of that. So thank you, sir. Now, we do have a question from a Mr. M, okay, I won't say Mr. or Miss because I don't know it, but it's M. Freeman. Had that person's hand up earlier, but asked the question in the line, and you all may have answered it, but just in case you didn't answer it in the chat, it says, how can we leaders protect our soldiers and peers from being compromised by telling them to perform skills that are out of their job description or licensed to meet the COVID-19 demands from the higher up command? That come across good, I hope so. So, sir, I'll let you answer that question first, and then ma'am, I'll jump to you.
Well, I see the question in the chat, and I hope I understand it, because we definitely don't want to put any of our subordinates in a position where they're compromised because we're asking them to do a job that they're not prepared for. So it's always incumbent upon us as leaders to resource our subordinates through training, through instruction, through direction and guidance and intent, so they can be successful. So if we're talking about asking people to do things that are outside their job description or they're not licensed to do, then I've got a challenge with the premise that, why we would be asking some people to do that, and then not setting conditions for them to be successful. Now, we always know that when a team gets handed a mission, it's not necessarily going to be exactly what comes out of a doctrinal manual. And there's things that we are sometimes challenged to do that we never thought we'd be asked to do. And it's similar to this mission that we're doing right now, where we're hosting just about 1,700 Afghan immigrants and family members here at Fort Lee. And as we got this mission set here back in July and had very little time to prepare for it, I counseled the team and I said, hey, this is nothing like we've ever done before, but at the same time, it's precisely like everything we've done before. And what I meant was, it was a different mission set than we've ever expected to get here at Fort Lee, and something that we didn't have in our playbook or a kit bag for the operations here at Fort Lee. But at the same time, we could go back to the fundamentals of the way that we plan operations, the way we execute operations, the way that we oversee them, the way that we rehearse for success, the way we prepare our subordinates to be successful through guidance and oversight and coaching. And so in that sense, I think we're able to be successful here, even though it was an unfamiliar mission, because we could rely upon fundamentals. So sometimes you do have to accept missions or assign tasks to individuals for things that are not in their playbook. But if it's something that we're supposed to be credentialed for, that's where I have challenges. And I would go back and talk to your seniors or people who are assigning those missions and ask them about the specific things that they're asking you to do, and see that they can resource those. But I see we've got a hand raised, so I think Ms. Freeman has a follow-up on that, maybe can be a little bit more specific.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry. It was actually my question. It's not from my unit per se, but I hear it from my husband. So he is an OR tech like me, but I just got my NCLEX, so I'm heading to Bullock soon. But it's very concerning to hear what he's been experiencing at work, saying that his techs are being asked to do an LPN jobs, which they don't have a associates or a license to do it, due to the high demand of the COVID patients. And I think it's kind of unfair that they have to, I did say compromise, but it's out of their job description. They don't have the license for that. And if something goes wrong, well, these soldiers are pretty much the ones who gets the downfall, because one, they don't have the license to pretty much do the job, but they were demanded to actually do it just to meet the demands of their patients and to alleviate more jobs from their leaders who actually has been doing more to meet their COVID patients. So I just want to ask, how can mid-leader or a staff sergeant advocate more if he voices concern that it's not fair for my soldiers to do a job description that is out of their job description for one, and they don't have a license to do it, to higher ups that don't really want to listen, but their priority is pretty much to take care of the COVID patients who's been, increasing recently as well. So how can we advocate more to that as leaders for our soldiers?
Sure, I know you've been in charge of all that's going on here in General Horoho. I know you have a role, quite a big role in working the COVID on a larger scale. Sir, would you like to address that first for the Fort Lee aspect? And then ma'am, would you like to address it from a larger standpoint? Over.
Yeah, so I think it's a really important question. And these are unusual times, and there's some unusual responsibilities that a lot of folks have, to include your husband right now. And his leadership may be challenged in some particular ways in terms of how they're going to take care of their patients, how they're going to take care of the mission. And maybe they're not using the best judgment as they assign tasks, and maybe they're not providing the best guidance and the support in that. And then hopefully your husband, has the opportunity to have that dialogue with his seniors. But here's what I would remind you: in some cases, our leaders don't always make the best decisions, and sometimes they need assistance. And there's a lot of means to assist them and to remind them of their responsibilities and to help and coach them. And so, sometimes the direct approach is helpful if you go to them and explain your concerns, but that doesn't always work. So we have many other ways to do that in the Army. There's many other means for somebody to go to and express concerns with that are built into the command. And they're built into the command so that everybody can use them. So, I'll use some examples. A unit chaplain is a great person to go to for advice, who might be able to provide some feedback to the leadership that is either for attribution or non-attribution. Go to the command sergeant major, maybe the senior enlisted side of that organization will be able to help assume some of that responsibility. Go to the IG, the Inspector General is there to help the organization protect the command and to give advice as well. Or even, we've got anonymous means of expressing concerns if they're not being met through ICE complaints and other things like that. But we have many avenues if we're putting people in the wrong position, or we're creating risk intentionally or unintentionally. And if the command, isn't approachable, or members of the chain of command aren't approachable, there's other ways. And I'll just finally add, we've got open door policies for a reason. So those are there to allow us to have that dialogue. So if there's concerns at one level, they can be raised to the next level for action.
Well, sir, that was a great point. And what, just like you said, some leaders just don't know what's happening. So bringing it up to our level and helping us understand what's happening in footprint can help us go out and educate those that are in this situation. Knowledge is power. So help us with that by identifying those issues. Ma'am, would you like to add something to it?
I think she lost audio.
Her earpiece went dead, but ma'am, can you get us on the big volume, or was that your computer saying I'm done? I'm not going to talk to them anymore. Probably have to just go to the large speaker on there.
So I saw her response that she wrote.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. There you go.
The headset just died and she lost comms. She'd go to her NCO clinical channels and raise the concerns, and also raise it to your clinical officer. So we know that she's had a lot of time in that medical environment. So that's really good concrete advice from her.
Absolutely. Well, look, you know what, ma'am? It actually died right at the right time, because it is 1953. And what we're going to do is we're going to end for the evening. And what I want to do before I go, I want to recognize the people that help make this program go so fast. And that's the executive board. And the executive board consists of Major Mari Lee, Captain Shalonda Estelle, Captain Sylvia Scott, Captain Mary Tang, and Captain Sierra Cooper Thomas. And that's the team that's here in Fort Lee that's making this train drive in the right direction. And we thank all of you that have participated and continue to participate on a monthly basis to bring this to the next level. And as you all know, we've been working to try to get this at the Department of the Army as well as DOD. And I know we invited some this evening, so hopefully within the total of, we had a 282 at the top, I'm sorry, 285 was the top number that I saw this evening. Hopefully in that group of the 285, some of those were the Department of Defense and Department of the Army representatives that sat in because they were invited to join us. So thank you all so much, sir. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Thank you for your engagement and taking on the baton of continuing to help promote the FMMP and ensure that we get this down to the lowest levels, because we value having our junior enlisted, even our cadets joining this program. Ma'am, I can't tell you and thank you enough for just taking the time to come in. I know you're busy, you're a CEO, so you're running a whole nother business. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join in with us. It is truly an honor to have you here and have you on here. And so for both of you, our hearts go out to you on all the things that you continue to do for us, you know, in America and in CASCOM. And so with that, I want to thank you again. And we will have the roster out of our next lineup. So with some more phenomenal leaders that are going to continue to bring messages to you, because we think it's valuable to have it coming straight from the top as decision makers, as well as being able to have it in down in our formations. Sir, would you like to make any final comments?
No, I just want to thank everybody for this forum and thank you for your leadership and your participation. It's definitely going to help make the Army better.
Thank you. Ma'am, were you able to find a way to get into us? I can read lips. I can't promise I can. Oh, no, I still can't hear you. Were you able to make the good to go? Well, ma'am, you were wonderful. And I know you're probably saying, you enjoyed it. I'm going to speak for you. You enjoyed it. It was your honor, and and you'll be back every month with us. Thank you all. Please have a wonderful evening. God bless you and enjoy your weekend and be safe and stay COVID free. Get your vaccines. Take care. Have a great evening. I'm always the last one, so just so you all know, feel free to join and jump off. But hey, Sergeant Major Raimondo, thank you so much for pushing that through Facebook. Team, thank you all so much. You guys did wonderful. Does anybody have any questions or concerns, or is there anybody out there trying to start a chapter in their area that they would like to talk about or get some guidance on?
Hey, ma'am, how are you? This is
Doing
Major.
wonderful. How are you?
I'm well. I'm excited. I have my appointment with my leadership, so I'm looking.
Right. Fort Benning, right? We're working